What if I told you that one man's ambition, paranoia, and possible mental illness resulted in the deaths of nearly 1 million people? Not in a war, not in a famine, but through systematic brutality, disappearances, and terror orchestrated by a single dictator. Welcome back to DeepReality Stories. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into one of Africa's darkest chapters, the rise and reign of Idi Amin, a man so brutal that even hardened dictators looked at him in horror. This is the untold story of how a British-trained soldier became a monster. Stay with me. If you love true crime and deep historical dives, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. Every great villain has an origin story. Idi Amin's is shrouded in mystery, literally. We don't even know for certain when Amin was born. Historical records suggest somewhere between 1923 and 1924, though his own son claimed it was 1928. Even his birthplace is disputed. While some claim he was born in Uganda's capital, Kampala, most historians agree he actually came from Kiboko, a small town in the Muslim-dominated northwest, near what is now South Sudan. His father, Andreas Nyabayer, was equally mysterious. Some say he was Kakwa, an ethnic group from northern Uganda. Others claim he was Nubian from Sudan. What we do know is that he abandoned young Idi and his mother when the boy was very young, leaving him to be raised by Asa Ad alone. The lack of a father figure, that would matter later. Young Idi attended an Islamic school at Bambo in the early 1940s while World War II raged thousands of miles away. He was quiet, athletic, and unremarkable, a boy caught between worlds, belonging fully to none. Few could have predicted he would become one of history's most brutal dictators. To understand how Amin rose to power, you need to understand Uganda itself. The British created Uganda in 1894, not because it was a naturally cohesive nation, but because it looked good on a map. Imagine drawing a line around dozens of different ethnic groups, religions, and cultures, people who had nothing in common, and declaring them one country. That was Uganda. In the south lived the Bagandans, a sophisticated civilization with their own kingdom. In the north and east were melodic peoples like the Kakwa and Lambara. There were Sudanese communities, Kuliite people scattered along the eastern border, and a complex tapestry of religions. Islam in the north, Christianity in the south, and ancient native religions throughout. The British didn't care about unity. They used divide-and-conquer tactics, favoring Christian Bagandans as administrators to rule over Muslim northerners. This wasn't accident, it was strategy. Resentment festered for decades. This fractured nation gained independence on October 9, 1962. Three major political parties emerged almost overnight, each representing different ethnic and religious groups. Milton Obote, a northerner, became the first prime minister. He was authoritarian, corrupt, and paranoid. And he needed someone to do his dirty work. Enter Idi Amin. Amin joined the King's African Rifles, the KAR, the British Colonial Army. And here's where we see the first real danger sign. He was good at it, really good. British officers described him as one of the finest soldiers they'd ever trained. He was strong, athletic, charismatic, and ruthless. By the early 1950s, he was stationed in Kenya, where the Mau Mau uprising against British rule was raging. He didn't just participate, he excelled, earning promotion after promotion. The British even sent him to Scotland for advanced training. Amin fell in love with the country. Yes, this detail matters later. By 1959, he'd become an Effendi, the highest rank an African could achieve in the British colonial military. He was one of only 2 native Ugandans with officer status when independence came in 1962. But here's the dark part. In late 1961 and early 1962, during a cattle raiding incident on the Uganda-Kenya border, Amin commanded his platoon to massacre scores of villagers. civilians, families. The British knew about it, but Uganda was about to gain independence, and Britain didn't want a scandal involving one of their few native officers. So they covered it up. He faced no court-martial, no consequences, nothing. This taught Amin a crucial lesson. Power protects you from accountability. He would never forget it. After independence, he continued rising through the ranks. Captain in 1962, Major in 1963, Deputy Commander in 1964. By 1965, at just 40 years old, he was one of the Army's top commanders. By 1970, Amin and Abot were running a massive smuggling operation. Gold and ivory stolen from the Congo, flowing north through Uganda and into their private accounts. When they got caught in 1966, instead of facing prosecution, Abot used the scandal as an excuse to seize absolute power. Brilliant strategy, evil but brilliant. Amin became Abot's enforcer, and by the late 1960s, he was untouchable. But Amin was already thinking ahead. He began filling the military with soldiers from his own ethnic group, the Kakwa and Nubai from the north, Muslims like himself. He was building his own private army within Uganda's military. Meanwhile, Abot grew paranoid. He cracked down on anyone he suspected of disloyalty. When an assassination attempt against Abot failed in 1969, he blamed the military. Thousands disappeared. Political prisoners vanished. Bodies floated down the Nile River. Amin was running these operations. He was getting a taste for power and for blood. By 1970, Abot saw the threat. He removed Amin from command and began preparing charges of financial misconduct against him. But Abot made a fatal mistake. He moved too slowly. Amin learned what was coming, and he struck first. January 25, 1971. Abot was in Singapore attending a Commonwealth meeting. Amin made his move. Tanks rolled through Kampala. Radio stations were seized. Within hours, Amin announced that he had liberated Uganda from Abot's corrupt dictatorship. He promised to restore the constitution, hold new elections, and return democracy to the nation. It was brilliant propaganda. The Ugandan people, exhausted by Abot's tyranny, actually celebrated. They had no idea what was coming. On February 2, 1971, Amin declared himself president. The temporary military government would last not months, but 8 years. 8 years of systematic terror. The first thing Amin did was purge the military and government of anyone who might threaten him. Thousands were removed from their positions. Most of them were killed. He renamed the government headquarters the command post, a fitting name for military rule. Then he appointed his own ethnic group, Kakwas and Nubis, to every position of power. The message was clear. Loyalty to Amin meant survival. Everything else meant death. And it was just the beginning. By 1972, the violence was accelerating. The Acholi and Lango peoples who had opposed Amin were systematically targeted. Soldiers, lawyers, teachers, religious leaders, anyone who might pose a threat, began disappearing. At least 5,000 vanished in just the first year. Bodies appeared in the Nile. Families never knew what happened to their loved ones. Then came the most notorious act of Amin's early regime. On August 4, 1972, Amin announced that all Asians without Ugandan citizenship had 90 days to leave the country. Uganda's Asian population, mostly from India, had dominated commerce and trade for centuries. They controlled 80 to 90% of Uganda's business and industry. Amin wanted their wealth. As desperate Asians fled to airports and borders, soldiers robbed them of everything. Jewelry, cash, property, deeds, all stolen. The Chief Justice of Uganda, Benedicto Kiwanuka, objected to these crimes. He was arrested in September 1972. He was later executed. 27,000 Asian refugees had to be airlifted to Britain by the United Nations. The message was unmistakable. Amin would steal from anyone, kill anyone, without hesitation. But his crimes were just beginning. In the mid-1970s, Amin created the State Research Bureau, a secret police force tasked with rooting out dissent. Its leader was Bob Aslez, a British colonial holdover who had somehow wormed his way into Amin's confidence. Under Aslez, the Bureau was responsible for disappearing thousands of people. It became normal to see cars pull up in the streets of Kampala, people forced into trunks and driven away. Most were never seen again. By the mid-1970s, Amin was becoming increasingly unhinged. He married at least 6 women in the 1960s and 1970s. He divorced 3 in 1974. 2 of them died under mysterious circumstances shortly after. In 1975, he married a 19-year-old go-go dancer named Sarah Kayolaba in a lavish £2 million wedding. Yasser Arafat, the Palestinian leader, was his best man. Yes, you read that right. He fathered as many as 50 children, many with concubines, and spread them across luxury palaces throughout the country. As he aged, Amin grew paranoid and erratic. He believed conspiracies were everywhere. Some of his behavior suggested genuine mental illness. Medical experts later suggested that Amin had contracted syphilis in his youth. By the 1970s, he may have been suffering from tertiary syphilis, which causes brain damage. This might explain some of his increasingly bizarre behavior. He sent a telegram to the UN Secretary General praising Adolf Hitler and seemingly endorsing the Holocaust. The international community realized they weren't dealing with a rational dictator. They were dealing with a partially mad man. His erratic foreign policy also alienated his remaining supporters. He sought weapons from Libya's Colonel Gaddafi, making false claims that 70% of Uganda was Muslim when the real number was around 6%. He entertained a bizarre fantasy of becoming King of Scotland. And in 1976, he allowed Palestinian terrorists to hijack an Air France plane and land it at Entebbe Airport near Kampala. The Israeli response: a surgical 90-minute commando raid that freed nearly all the hostages, destroyed Uganda's air force, and humiliated Amin on the world stage. The dictator was losing control, both of the country and of his mind. By late 1977, the military was fracturing. A rival general, Mustafa Adrasi, was gaining followers. Amin, desperate to consolidate power, made a catastrophic decision. In late 1978, he invaded Tanzania. It seemed like a move to shore up his authority at home. Instead, it was his final mistake. Tanzania's president, Julius Nyerere, fought back ferociously. By 1979, Amin's forces were defeated. He fled Uganda, eventually finding exile in Saudi Arabia and other countries. He lived freely until his death in 2003. He was never prosecuted, never faced an international court, never answered for his crimes. The death toll. Historians estimate that Amin's regime killed at least 300,000 people between 1971 and 1979. Some evidence suggests the actual number could be as high as 800,000. In 8 years, one man, possibly mad, definitely evil, murdered as many people as some entire nations lost in World War II. Uganda was left in ruins. The country that followed was hardly better. Yoweri Museveni took power after Amin's fall and has ruled Uganda ever since, with his own documented human rights abuses. Amin's legacy is a cautionary tale about the dangers of concentrated power, the failures of decolonization in Africa, and how the world's superpowers, in their Cold War competition, enabled and protected dictators for their own geopolitical interests. He was trained by the British, armed by Western and Soviet powers, protected by Cold War alliances, And when he finally fell, he was allowed to disappear into history with barely a whisper of accountability. That, perhaps, is the most disturbing part of this story. Thanks for watching DeepReality Stories. If you want to explore more untold histories and deep dives into humanity's darkest moments, subscribe now. Drop a comment below. Do you think Amin was Africa's most brutal dictator?